The MCU spent many a film building up the tension and placing all of the pieces for the ultimate cinematic crossover story, Avengers: Infinity War, in which the Mad Titan Thanos wiped out half of all existence with the snap of his fingers, and the help of the Infinity Gems, of course. But with Avengers 4 on the horizon, many suspect that the thrilling conclusion to Thanos' reign of terror will end with the supervillain being incapacitated, in some way or another. Meaning, who will take Thanos' place in Phase 4 of the MCU as the big bad? Who will be the villain that will stir things up and threaten to wipe out our favorite heroes? Well, today we're counting down the other baddies from the Marvel Universe that our heroes, and you, should be shaking in your boots about, with our list of the top 10 supervillains who are a bigger threat than Thanos. And hey, the Infinity Gauntlet is pretty hard to top, all things considered. So we tried our best to put together a group of evildoers that could give the Mad Titan a run for his money. Let's get to it. Starting us off in at number 10, the Skrulls. The Skrulls seem like the most obvious threat heading into Phase 4 of the MCU. Now, in case you've been out of the loop, the Skrulls, who are a shape-shifting race of aliens, are making their debut in the upcoming Captain Marvel movie, and they find their way onto Earth. This has led to speculation that the MCU will be gearing up to tell the 2008 Secret Invasion storyline from the comics, in which the Skrulls had quietly embarked on a long-term invasion of Earth by replacing various characters with Skrull agents, the latter having shape-shifting to look like the former. The Skrulls, according to Brian Michael Bendis, who penned the storyline for Marvel, believe that Earth is religiously and rightfully theirs, and considering the beef between the Skrulls and the Kree, you can imagine that this conflict will play out nicely in Captain Marvel's movie. But the extent of the Skrulls' influence in the MCU will be determined based off of what happens in that movie, so who knows? They may not have a powerful object like the Infinity Gauntlet, but the Skrull imposters would surely make for some dramatic who do you trust moments in the MCU. Moving on to number 9, Death. For those of you who have read the Infinity Gauntlet comic, the 1991 epic written by Jim Starlin and penciled by George Perez that pretty much all of the third Avengers movie was based off of, you know that Death plays an important role in Thanos' story. It was something that was left out of the Avengers Infinity War film. In the comic, Death is the reason why Thanos does what he does. He's motivated out of the need to impress her, and it all escalates from there. Thanos balances out the universe in an attempt to please Death, and even out the number of living beings. In the film, she's never mentioned. So what if she were to make an appearance in the MCU? Now the only thing is, Death doesn't do her own dirty work. Having a powerful entity like Death become a major player in the MCU would mean that another character would likely be executing her desires. And quite frankly, there isn't anyone more capable or susceptible to that than Thanos. While we don't think it's likely that Death will make an appearance in Avengers 4, who really knows what kinds of creative liberties Marvel Studios might make down the road? And if Thanos were to ever return after the conclusion of Avengers 4, having his beloved Death influence him could be one way to make that happen. Up next, number 8, the Living Tribunal. There's a theory kicking around on the interwebs that Doctor Strange will come into contact with the Living Tribunal in the upcoming Avengers 4 movie. But let's backtrack a moment. The Living Tribunal is a cosmic entity that first appeared in Strange Tales issue 157 back in 1967, in which Doctor Strange had to prove to them within a limited amount of time that Earth was worth saving. The Living Tribunal oversees and maintains balance across all realities within the Marvel multiverse, serving as a judge of sorts. There's nothing innately nefarious about the Living Tribunal, other than they are an objective entity with a grander cosmic purpose, and when that purpose conflicts with what's going on in the MCU, well, that could stir up a whole lot of conflict. Now, if the Living Tribunal were to debut in Avengers 4, that could open up the door for more influence from cosmic entities in the MCU. Plus, if the rumors about the film are true, those being that the Living Tribunal wants to reset the universe since Thanos has gone and goofed it up real bad, that sort of logic could be rather threatening later on down the line. And at number 7, Icon. Icon is a much smaller character on this list compared to some of our other numbers. Known as the Lord of Illusions, Icon is a mystical entity that is often invoked by sorcerers, including our pal, Stephen Strange. How does Icon fit into the MCU? Well, Doctor Strange has already used a spell in the MCU that in the comics is known as the Images of Icon, which allowed him to create shadow clones of himself and numerous arms. Theoretically, if Strange's magic in the MCU follows suit with the comics, he often has to invoke a mystical being or force in order to properly conduct the spell, calling upon their energy to execute it. Meaning, there's a small chance that we could see Icon somewhere down the line. The Images of Icon is said to be one of the most powerful illusory spells in the Marvel Universe, having the ability to make the illusions it creates a reality if the power behind the spell is strong enough. Extreme power over reality? Yeah, that could cause a whole lot of damage. We think that if Icon were to make an appearance in the MCU, it'd be under similar circumstances as Death. Technically the source of the villainy, but not the one doing all the dirty work. And at number 6, Magus. Magus is an older evil version of Adam Warlock, but more on that in a sec. Warlock, for those of you unfamiliar with the character, was first introduced in Fantastic Four issue 66 in 1967, but as him. Yep. Later in Marvel Premiere issue 1 in 1972, he would be called Adam Warlock, a character who is often paralleled to Jesus Christ, capable of manipulating cosmic energy. energy. He's immortal, with his powers increasing each time he's resurrected. Later in the comics, he was able to use quantum magic, which manipulates quantum energy. He's also the dude in the Infinity Gauntlet comic who was the mastermind behind defeating Thanos. He's a smart fella. Magus, on the other hand, is Warlock from the future, who traveled to the past in order to ensure his own creation. Magus rules a religious empire known as the Universal Church of Truth, and his whole mission is to manipulate Warlock into the actions that will eventually lead to Warlock becoming his future self, which causes Warlock to try to alter the future and destroy Magus' timeline in an attempt to cease his existence. Yeah, a lot going on there. Magus came to be after Warlock wore the Infinity Gauntlet. Wearing the gauntlet, he expelled good and evil from his soul, both of which took a corporeal form, with the evil half becoming Magus. When Warlock is eventually integrated into the MCU, surely Magus will eventually be explored, especially if the character gets his own film or becomes one of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Up next, number 5, Mephisto. Mephisto is yet another character who was involved in Thanos' story in the Infinity Gauntlet comic and never made the cut into the MCU, although he did make an appearance in the 2007 Ghost Rider movie. But let's just ignore that exists. Nicolas Cage. Mephisto is a character inspired by Mephistopheles, a demon from Faust legend. Mephisto is kinda like Satan if you boil it down. His whole shtick is to tempt characters and acquire souls, but can only do so by forming a pact with the victim. It's the whole deal with the devil trope. He's an extremely powerful immortal entity with magic powers that he gained through manipulation. Whenever his physical form is destroyed, he can regenerate and reform. During Infinity Gauntlet, when Thanos had acquired all of the gems, Mephisto pledged his allegiance to the Mad Titan, watching carefully from the sidelines. His intellect is perhaps his most dangerous quality, and he has a long history with multiple characters in the Marvel Universe, including Spider-Man, so he would be a character that could easily be translated up on the big screen if Marvel Studios chose to go in that direction. And at number 4, Cyttorak. Cyttorak is another mystical being. He's a part of the same club as Icon, the Octosens, and has proven himself to be the most powerful of the group after he made a little wager with the other members. What was that wager? Who's the best at enslaving all of humanity via enchanted artifacts? Yeah, doesn't sound like an overly friendly or compassionate being, does he? So it's not completely impossible for Cyttorak to be introduced into the MCU either. If you recall, during Infinity War, during the battle on Titan between Thanos, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, and a handful of the Guardians, Doctor Strange whipped out a spell in which he used red bands of energy to hold Thanos down. That spell is known as the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak. All in all, Cyttorak is an extremely powerful mystical being who loves power and is totally down with killing off humans. So yeah, kinda fits the villain build there, doesn't he? Up next, number 3, Dormammu. Doctor Strange may have put Dormammu in his place during his 2016 feature film, but do not be fooled. Dormammu is capable of a lot more than what we briefly saw on screen, and there's a darn good reason why the Ancient One was so shook about him. Dormammu first appeared in the comics in Strange Tales issue 126 back in 1964. Created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, Dormammu was eventually established as the ruler of an alternate dimension known as the Dark Dimension, and is malevolent in nature. Composed of mystical energy, Dormammu uses that energy to achieve basically anything he wants. From energy projection, matter manipulation, possession, necromancy, creating demons, list goes on. And he has many a follower too. And thanks to the Doctor Strange movie, we have an idea of what those followers are capable of. Now, according to Strange, Dormammu is a threat to the life of the universe itself, and at full power, no one could stand against him. Now, we've only scratched the surface with Dormammu in the MCU, so it wouldn't be surprising if he made another appearance sometime in the future to cause a ruckus, at least in the second Doctor Strange movie. Moving on to number 2, Galactus. Galactus was first introduced in the Marvel Universe in the comics back in 1966, in issue 48 of the Fantastic Four. He was Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's attempt at introducing a villain that broke away from the supervillain archetype, a godlike figure who needs to be fed by draining planets of their energy, and doesn't follow a code of judgment or any sort of morality in doing so. It's all to fulfill his hunger. Now, in my opinion, the natural progression of the MCU is leading to Galactus. To one-up their game from Thanos, it would be to introduce him. Thanos' whole MO in the MCU is that he wants to balance out the universe, otherwise we'll deplete its resources faster than we can continue to grow them. In theory, his cause makes sense, but in execution, that's where he's a real SOB. Moving from Thanos to a character like Galactus, who devours worlds simply to fulfill his hunger, would be an intriguing move. Marvel Studios likes to play with the moral ambiguity of its villains thus far, even if it is just in a subtle way. Galactus would push this exploration even further, since he redefines what exactly an evildoer is. Also, dude eats planets. Might not be the Infinity Gauntlet, but damn, he sure is hell intimidating. And finally, in at number 1, the Phoenix Force. Now that the X-Men will be integrated into the MCU, you can bet your butt that somewhere down the line, the Phoenix Force will pop up and make a big ol' mess of Jean Grey's life. First appearing in Uncanny X-Men issue 101 back in 1976, the Phoenix Force is an entity that bonds with an individual. It's an immortal and immutable manifestation of the universal force of life and passion, a child of the universe, and the nexus of all psionic energy that exists across the realities of the multiverse. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. It has the power to cut and regrow part of the universe, and to also destroy brilliant, and at times it's proven to be outright gluttonous. It's central to one of the most important storylines within the X-Men narratives. While Jean Grey being possessed by the Phoenix is likely a long way out in terms of when or if it'll pop up in the MCU, the damage that the Phoenix Force could cause could potentially surpass what Thanos has done, and it'll surely surpass the trouble of what its appearance in the original X-Men franchise resulted in. Alright, there we have it, friends. So what are your thoughts? Who do you think is a bigger threat than Thanos in the MCU? Who should be the next big bad set up to cause mayhem and distress in these movies? Give us a shout in those comments below and let us know what you think. If you dug this video, spread the love, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd for more lists just like these. In the meantime though guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.